My name is Jessica. I am 35 years old, and today I want to share a story that changed the way I saw family, respect, and even myself. Before I take you back to the beginning, let me tell you the most shocking moment that still makes my heart race whenever I think about it. It happened one evening at my parents' house. We were all sitting at the dining table, my mom, my dad, my sister Emily, and me. Emily, being the younger sister, always had a sharp tongue. She leaned back in her chair, smirked, and said, "You can't even afford a car, Jessica." Mom didn't defend me. Instead, she added fuel to the fire. She rolled her eyes and said, "It's just junk anyway. Even if she had one, it would be trash." The room filled with laughter. Everyone was laughing at me, as if I was the biggest joke in the family. Their voices cut through me, but instead of showing my hurt, I smirked back. I quietly picked up my phone, dialed a number, and said just 4 words. "Come pick me up now." 5 minutes later, I heard the rumble of an engine outside. Heads turned. Emily, curious as ever, went to peek out the window. Her eyes widened. Her jaw dropped. Then, without a word, she fainted right there on the floor. The entire table froze. And that was the moment everything changed. But before I tell you what Emily saw that made her faint, let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand that night, you need to understand me, my family, and the road that led us there. My story isn't just about cars or money. It's about kindness, betrayal, laughter, and pain. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see yourself somewhere inside it. But first, let me ask you this. Where are you watching from right now? Are you in the United States? Canada? Maybe somewhere else? Because this story could happen to anyone, anywhere. Now, let me introduce my family properly. I am Jessica, like I said. The quiet one. The one everyone in my family assumed would never make it big. I was always the helper, the listener, the one who sacrificed for others. But they rarely saw that. To them, I was just ordinary. My younger sister, Emily, was different. She was the golden child. The one with the fancy job, the expensive clothes, and the endless confidence. She loved attention and knew exactly how to get it. But kindness? That wasn't her strong suit. Then there was Mom. A woman who smiled when others laughed at me, who sipped her wine as though my pain was entertainment. She wasn't always like that, but over the years, she had grown distant, colder somehow. And Dad? Well, Dad was the silent type. He never said much, but his silence often spoke louder than words. Sometimes he ignored the cruelty in a room, and sometimes I wondered if deep down he agreed with it. Now, let me tell you how everything began. It was a sunny Saturday morning in Toronto. The air smelled like fresh coffee from the cafe on the corner. I had just gotten off work from my second job. Yes, you heard that right, my second job. At 35, I was juggling more than most people I knew. Not because I was reckless, but because I was trying to build something greater. See, I had a dream. While everyone thought I was just surviving, I was actually building my future in silence. Instead of spending money on designer bags or expensive dinners like Emily, I saved every cent. I skipped vacations, I walked when I could, I wore old shoes until they tore apart. To some people, that looked like failure. But in truth, it was discipline. That morning, I stopped by Mom's house because she had invited me for dinner later that evening. She wanted the whole family together. I should have known better, but I went anyway. The moment I walked in, Emily was already there. She was showing off a new purse she had bought. The way she held it up, almost shoving it in my face, made me feel small. "See this?" she bragged. "It's worth more than your whole wardrobe, Jess." I just smiled. I didn't bother to argue. What would be the point? But here's the thing. While they thought I was struggling, I had been quietly working on something none of them knew about. And that secret was about to change everything. Dinner time came. The table was full of food: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and wine. Emily, as always, dominated the conversation. She talked about her promotion, her new friends, and her plans for another trip to New York. Everyone clapped and cheered for her. When I tried to share about my week, about the people I had helped at work, and the projects I had been pouring myself into, no one cared. The room went silent for a moment. Then Emily laughed. Wow, Jess, that's your big news? You really can't even afford a car, can you? Everyone laughed, Mom included. I forced a smirk, but my hands were trembling under the table. My heart pounded, not from shame, but from the knowledge of what was about to happen. So I made the call. Come pick me up now. And just like that, the energy in the room shifted. 5 minutes later, when Emily fainted, the laughter died. No one spoke. The only sound was the purr of the engine waiting outside. I took a slow breath. And that is where everything started. Now, you're probably wondering, what did Emily see? Why did she faint? What was waiting outside that could turn a dinner joke into pure shock? Well, that's where the story really begins. Emily's body hit the floor with a loud thud. Her wine glass rolled across the carpet, spilling dark red stains that spread like blood. Mom gasped, Dad shot up from his chair, and for the first time in years, the room was silent. No more laughter. No more jokes at my expense. Just confusion, fear, and disbelief. Mom bent down beside Emily, shaking her. Emily? Emily. Her voice cracked, not from worry, but from shock. I sat there calmly, my fork still in my hand. I didn't move. I didn't rush to help. For years, I had been the one running around, fixing, soothing, apologizing. But not tonight. Tonight, I let them taste silence. Through the window, the headlights from outside poured into the room. The sound of the engine still hummed, steady and powerful. Dad slowly walked to the curtain and pulled it open wider. His eyes widened. His lips parted. He didn't say a word, but I saw his hands tremble as he gripped the window frame. I knew what he was seeing. I knew why Emily fainted. But I wasn't ready to tell them yet. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my water, and smirked. Still think I can't afford a car? I whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. The silence in the room deepened. The only sound was Emily groaning on the carpet as Mom fanned her face. But before I take you outside that window, before I reveal what exactly stood there in the driveway, let me tell you why it mattered so much. Why this moment wasn't just about showing off a car, but about years of sacrifice and pain they never saw. Because this story isn't about revenge. It's about respect. 2 years earlier, I was in a very different place. My life was falling apart. I had just lost my job in Seattle. Bills piled up, and I had to move back to Toronto with almost nothing. I remember walking through the airport with one suitcase, feeling like the biggest failure alive. When I arrived home, Emily was the first to remind me of it. So, the great Jessica's back, she said. What happened? Couldn't make it out there? She laughed, as if my pain was her favorite show. Mom wasn't much better. You need to get serious about your life, she said, pouring herself another glass of wine. Emily is working, traveling, buying real estate. Look at you, 33 and nothing to show for it. Those words burned. But instead of breaking me, they fueled me. That night, lying on the couch in my old room, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't explain. I wouldn't argue. I would show them. Not with words, but with proof. I picked up 2 jobs, one at a diner and one at a warehouse. I worked 16-hour days. My body ached, my hands blistered, but every time I thought about quitting, I remembered Emily's laughter and Mom's cold smile. I saved every dollar. I lived on noodles, skipped outings, wore the same clothes for years. People thought I was miserable. But in my heart, I was building something. During those years, I also learned something more important than money. I learned about kindness. At the diner, there was a homeless man named Robert who came in sometimes, just to warm up. He never had enough to buy a full meal, so I used to sneak him coffee and pie. One day he told me, "You're the only person who sees me, Jessica. Everyone else just looks through me." His words stuck with me. It made me realize that life wasn't about proving people wrong, it was about lifting others up. But sometimes, lifting others up meant also lifting yourself, so they couldn't step on you anymore. That's why what happened at that dinner table mattered so much. It wasn't just about a car. It was about every insult, every laugh, Every night I cried into my pillow, wondering if I'd ever be enough. And now, in that moment, the truth was parked right outside my parents' house. Emily slowly woke up, groaning, her hand pressed to her forehead. What is that?" she whispered, pointing toward the window. Dad didn't answer. He just stared, his mouth hanging open. Mom finally turned her head, following his gaze. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the floor. I smiled. "Go on," I said softly. "Take a closer look." They moved toward the window, step by step, as if they couldn't believe their own eyes. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with shock. And then, just as they reached the window, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Everyone jumped. Emily clutched her chest. Mom gasped. Dad froze in place. The knock came again. Louder this time. 3 sharp bangs. The sound rattled through the house. And that's when the real fear began. The 3 loud knocks echoed through the house like thunder. Bang, bang, bang. No one moved. No one breathed. The laughter that once filled the dining room felt like a distant memory. All that remained was tension so heavy it could crush bones. Emily, still pale from fainting, whispered, Don't open it." Mom's eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "Jessica, who did you call?" Her voice was trembling now, her confidence gone. I didn't answer. Instead, I folded my napkin neatly, placed it on the table, and stood up slowly. Every step I took toward that door was deliberate. I could feel their eyes burning into my back, waiting, terrified of what they might see. The knocks came again. This time, even louder. Bang, bang, bang. Dad finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Jessica, if this is some kind of joke." "It's no joke," I said calmly, my hand reaching for the doorknob. I pulled the door open. The engine outside roared louder now, and the headlights lit up the front yard like a stage. Standing on the porch was a man in a black suit, tall and serious. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't friendly. He looked like someone you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. Behind him, in the driveway, was the reason Emily fainted. A sleek, black car. Not just any car. A luxury vehicle worth more than Emily's condo. Its surface gleamed under the streetlight, its chrome rims shining like diamonds. Even from the doorway, you could smell the fresh leather interior. The man in the suit tipped his head politely toward me. "Miss Jessica, your car is ready." Gasps filled the house. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Emily stumbled backward, clutching the wall for balance. Dad blinked rapidly, as if trying to convince himself this wasn't real. I stepped aside, letting them see everything clearly. The polished car, the suited driver, the power they never imagined I could hold. Emily's voice cracked. That can't be yours." But it was. And they all knew it. Now, here's the thing, this moment didn't just happen overnight. That car wasn't a random purchase, and that man in the suit wasn't a stranger. This had been planned for months. Every detail, every penny, every hour I worked had led to this moment. As the driver stood waiting, I turned back to my family. "You laughed when I had nothing," I said softly. "You mocked me when I walked instead of drove. But you had no idea what I was building." The room was silent. Even the sound of the car's engine seemed to fade into the background. Emily finally snapped. "So what? You bought an expensive car? That doesn't make you better than us." Her voice was shrill, desperate. But deep down, she wasn't angry at me. She was angry at herself for underestimating me, for realizing that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the golden child anymore. Dad cleared his throat. "Jessica, how did you afford this?" His voice was calm, but I could see the storm in his eyes. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I motioned for the driver to step back and close the door. The sound of the door clicking shut made Mom flinch. Then I walked back to the dining table, sat down, and smiled. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. For a moment, they just stared at me. Then Mom shook her head. This is impossible. You don't have the kind of money for that." Her words stung, but I kept my face steady. I had learned long ago that the best revenge wasn't shouting or fighting. It was letting the truth speak for itself. The truth was parked right outside their house. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that the car wasn't the biggest part of the secret. The car was just the beginning, because along with it came something much, much bigger. And that was the part one hadn't told them yet. Suddenly, Emily slammed her hands on the table. Plates rattled. Glasses shook. "Tell us the truth, Jessica. Right now." Her face was red, her voice trembling between anger and fear. I looked her dead in the eye, calm and steady. And then, before I could say a word, the driver knocked again. This time, not on the door, but on the window. Tap, tap, tap. Everyone jumped. We turned to look, and this time, he wasn't alone. 2 more men in black suits stood beside him. And in that moment, I knew the night was about to change forever. The 3 men in suits stood outside the window, their figures lit by the glow of the car's headlights. Their presence was intimidating, their faces serious, unreadable. Mom's wine glass slipped again, shattering into pieces across the hardwood floor. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Jessica, who are they?" Emily clutched her chest, eyes darting from me to the window. "What's happening? Why are there 3 of them now?" Dad rose to his feet, fists clenched, trying to sound firm but failing to hide the fear in his voice. "Jessica, you better explain yourself right now." I stayed seated, calm, my fork still in my hand as though the chaos around me was nothing more than background noise. The driver outside knocked again, this time softer. Polite. Patient. I finally stood, pushed in my chair, and walked toward the window. With each step, my family's tension grew. They watched me as though I was walking toward a firing squad. I opened the front door again. The men didn't enter. They simply stood tall, waiting. The driver, the one who first knocked, spoke again. "Miss Jessica, the documents are ready. Do you want us to bring them in now?" Mom's mouth fell open. Emily gasped. Dad's brows knitted together in confusion. "Documents?" Emily squeaked. "What documents?" I smiled faintly. "Business documents." The men gave me a respectful nod and walked back toward the car, leaving the family in utter silence. I closed the door gently, turned around, and looked straight at them. "You always assumed I was failing," I said softly. "But while you were laughing, I was building. While you were mocking, I was working. And those men? They don't work for a car company. They work for me." Mom's lips parted, but no words came out. Dad blinked, his face turning pale. Emily shook her head violently. "No," she snapped. "You're lying. You? A business owner? That's ridiculous." But her voice wavered, because deep down, she knew the truth was standing right outside in tailored suits. I sat back down, calmly picked up my fork, and stabbed a piece of chicken from my plate. I chewed slowly, letting them stew in their disbelief. Then I leaned back in my chair. 2 years ago, when you mocked me for having nothing, I promised myself I'd never depend on any of you again. I worked, I saved, I invested. I started small, a delivery service, then a logistics company. And now, well, let's just say things grew faster than you think. Emily's hands shook as she grabbed her wine glass, spilling it all over her dress. No, this can't be true. If you had money, why would you live like that? Sharing clothes, eating noodles, never going out. Because discipline, I said coldly, is something you'll never understand. The silence that followed was crushing. For once, Emily had no comeback. Mom had no sharp remark. Dad had no judgment. But then, just as the silence settled, a loud crash erupted from outside. It wasn't the car. It wasn't the men. It was glass. The sound of shattering windows rang through the house. Emily screamed. Mom jumped to her feet. Dad ran toward the front hall. I froze for a second, my heart thudding. Because this wasn't part of the plan. Something or someone had just broken into the house. The sound of glass exploding cut through the night like a scream. Shards flew across the living room floor, glittering under the chandelier's light. Emily shrieked and ducked behind Mom. Dad rushed forward, his voice booming, "Who's there?" But no answer came. Just silence and the eerie whistle of wind slipping through the broken window. My pulse quickened. I knew the men outside were trained professionals. They wouldn't let anyone get close to the house without permission. So, if the glass had been broken, it wasn't them. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. I walked slowly toward the window, ignoring Emily's desperate cry. "Don't go, Jessica. Stay away." When I reached the frame, I saw the damage, jagged edges, pieces of glass scattered on the floor. But beyond the broken window, the men in suits still stood calmly by the car, unfazed. Their posture hadn't changed. Their eyes were fixed on the shadows beyond the driveway. That's when I saw it. A rock, lying in the middle of the carpet, still dusted with dirt from the outside. Someone had thrown it. Dad picked it up, his face red with anger. Who would dare? But before he could finish, another rock came flying through the second window with a deafening crash. Mom screamed. Emily clutched her ears. This time, I ran to the window, my eyes scanning the darkness. And then I saw movement. Across the street, half hidden behind a tree, was a group of people. 3, maybe 4. Their faces were shadowed, but I could see enough. They weren't strangers. I knew one of them, and my stomach dropped, because the person standing at the front, the one holding another rock in their hand, was Robert. Yes, Robert. The homeless man I had once fed coffee and pie at the diner. The man who had told me I was the only one who ever saw him.
My throat went dry.
What was he doing here? Mom saw the look on my face. "Jessica, who is that?" I didn't answer. My heart was racing too fast. Robert lifted the rock higher, his eyes locked on me through the window. But this wasn't the Robert the first remembered, the gentle, broken man grateful for kindness. This Robert looked angry, bitter, different. The men in suits finally moved, stepping forward, blocking the yard like shields. One of them spoke into a small device clipped to his collar. Their calmness only made the tension sharper. Emily wailed, "Oh my God. Jessica, what have you gotten us into?" Dad barked. "Who is that man?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay steady. "He's someone I helped once, but I don't know why he's here now." The words sounded weak even as they left my lips. Robert dropped the rock, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he shouted across the street, his voice cutting through the night. "Jessica, you think you're better than everyone now? You think money makes you untouchable?" Mom gasped. Emily froze. Dad turned to me slowly, his expression dark. And in that moment I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. My past, the kindness I thought was harmless, had followed me home. The men in suits closed ranks, their hands at their sides, ready for anything. Then Robert shouted again. "You owe me, Jessica, and I'm not leaving until you pay." Before I could respond, he stepped out of the shadows, and in his hand, glinting under the streetlight, wasn't a rock this time. It was a knife. The glint of the knife under the streetlight froze everyone in place. Emily screamed, her voice cracking into the night. Mom staggered backward, nearly tripping over the broken glass on the floor. Dad rushed to the door, his fists clenched, as though ready to fight. But I didn't move. My eyes locked on Robert's, and for a moment, I was back in the diner 2 years ago. He used to sit at the corner booth every night, his clothes tattered, his face tired. He never asked for much. Just warmth. Just a smile. Just a piece of pie when I could spare it. And I had given it to him, quietly, without expecting anything in return. I remembered how he'd once said to me, "Jessica, people only see me when they're afraid of me. You're the only one who ever saw me when I was just human." That man, the man I once saw, wasn't standing outside my parents' house anymore. This Robert had hard eyes, tight fists, and anger radiating from every inch of his body. "Jessica," he shouted, pointing the knife toward me. "You think you're some big shot now? Driving around in fancy cars, with men in suits at your door?
You forgot about me.
You left me behind." The men in black moved forward, forming a wall between Robert and the house. One of them spoke firmly, his voice deep. "Sir, drop the weapon. Step back now." But Robert didn't listen. He stepped closer, his feet crunching on the gravel. His voice grew louder. She gave me hope, and then she abandoned me. She thinks she's too good for people like me now. My chest tightened. This wasn't about money. This was about betrayal, at least in his mind. He had twisted my kindness into something else, something dangerous. Emily clung to Mom, her voice shaking. Jess, why is he saying this? What did you do to him? Dad shot me a sharp look. Is there something you're not telling us? But I didn't answer. Not yet. Because Robert wasn't finished. You promised me, Jessica, he yelled. His hand shook as he raised the knife higher. You said you'd never let me feel invisible again. But once you got your life together, you forgot all about me. I was nothing to you. His words hit me like stones. I never made that promise, not with words. But maybe with my actions I had. Maybe every smile, every meal, every kind word had told him something I never meant to say, that I'd always be there. And now he wanted to collect on a debt I never agreed to pay. The driver outside, my most trusted guard, took one step closer. His voice was calm, steady, almost cold. Sir, if you don't put the weapon down now, we will be forced to act. Robert's eyes darted to the guards, then back to me. He shook his head violently. No, he roared. She has to answer me. She owes me, not you. She owes me. The knife glinted again as he raised it higher, his body trembling with rage. And then, before anyone could move, before the guards could intervene, before Dad could shout again, Robert charged forward, straight toward the house. Emily screamed. Mom collapsed into her chair, her body shaking. And me? I didn't run. I stepped forward. Because I knew if I didn't face him now, no one in that house would ever be safe again. Robert reached the porch, his knife flashing in the light. His footsteps pounded against the wooden boards. He was only a breath away. And then, suddenly, one of the guards moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move. A blur of black suit and strength. There was a loud crack. The knife clattered to the ground. Robert fell to his knees, clutching his arm, groaning in pain. But even as the guards restrained him, even as Emily sobbed and Mom shook her head in disbelief, Robert lifted his eyes to me, burning, furious, broken. You think this is over, Jessica? He rasped, spitting blood onto the porch. It's just the beginning. And then he said something that turned my blood to ice. I know your secret, and I'll make sure they know it too. Robert's voice was hoarse, but his words cut sharper than the knife he had just dropped. I know your secret, he spat, his eyes blazing with rage. And I'll make sure they know it too. The guards pinned him against the porch, one holding his arms behind his back, while another kept a firm hand on his shoulder. But even restrained, Robert's voice carried through the night, dripping with venom. Mom clutched the edge of the dining table, her knuckles white. Secret? What's secret? She demanded, her eyes snapping toward me. Emily, her face pale and streaked with tears, whispered, Jessica, what is he talking about? Dad's expression hardened. Answer them. The room spun for a moment as all three of them stared at me, waiting. But I didn't flinch. I couldn't, not now. Because the truth was, Robert wasn't lying. He did know something. Something I had buried so deep that not even my family, the ones who mocked me daily, had ever guessed. I stepped forward, slowly, until I was standing in the doorway, the broken glass crunching under my shoes. Robert's eyes burned into me, daring me to deny it. Careful, I whispered, my voice low enough for only him to hear. You don't know everything. But Robert only laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. I know enough. The guards began to drag him away, but he twisted, shouting over his shoulder. Ask her where the money really came from. Ask her who she betrayed to get it. The words hit my family like lightning. Mom gasped. Emily staggered back. Dad's face turned red, his voice booming. What is he talking about, Jessica? I froze. For the first time that night, my calm mask cracked. My chest rose and fell faster, my throat tightening. Because Robert wasn't making it up. 2 years ago, when I started my first business, I didn't do it alone. I had a partner. Someone who believed in me, someone who gave me more than just money, they gave me trust. And then, everything went wrong. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking from Robert to my family. "It's not what you think," I said finally. Emily's voice rose to a shriek. "So it's true. You did something shady. That car, those men, all of it, it's dirty money." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound so sharp it made her jump. "It is not dirty money," I snapped. "I worked for everything I have. I sacrificed more than you could ever imagine." But yes, my voice softened, almost breaking. "There are things I haven't told you." The room fell into silence again, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Outside, the guards forced Robert into the back of a black SUV. He was still shouting, his voice muffled through the glass. "They'll find out. Everyone will know what you did." The SUV pulled away, its headlights disappearing into the night. But his words lingered in the air, heavy, poisonous. Mom was the first to speak. Her voice was cold, sharp like a blade. "What did you do, Jessica?" Emily crossed her arms, her chin trembling. "You always acted like you were better than us. Maybe you're worse." Dad just stared, silent, his jaw tight. And me? I stood there, my heart pounding, my mind racing back to the moment everything changed 2 years ago. The moment I made a choice that still haunted me. I opened my mouth to finally tell them, but before I could, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house. It wasn't glass this time. It was wood. The back door. Someone had just broken in. Mom screamed. Emily ran behind Dad. The guards rushed inside, their guns drawn. And as the footsteps thundered closer, I realized with horror. Robert wasn't alone tonight. The crash shook the entire house. For a moment, everything froze, the guards, my family, even me. Then came the heavy footsteps pounding against the tile floor, closer and closer. The guards darted toward the hallway, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Secure the family," one shouted. But before they could reach the back, the kitchen door slammed open with a force that rattled the cabinets. 2 masked men in black stormed in. One carried a crowbar, the other a pistol. Mom shrieked and stumbled backward, nearly toppling her wine glass. Emily clung to Dad's arm, trembling. The man with the pistol barked. "Nobody move." The guards froze, their weapons still at their sides. The man's voice was steady, commanding, like he had done this before. Then he pointed straight at me. "You, Jessica, you're coming with us." My heart dropped. Mom gasped. "Why her? What do you want with my daughter?" The man's eyes, dark, unblinking behind the mask, never left me. "She knows why." Emily's voice cracked. "What's happening, Jessica? Why are these people after you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my body rigid. Because this wasn't random. These men weren't thieves. They weren't strangers. They were connected to Robert. The crowbar-wielding man stepped closer, shoving one of the guards aside. "You've got 5 seconds to come with us, or things get ugly." The guards moved at once, guns raised, shouting commands. "Drop your weapons." On the ground, the man with the pistol fired into the ceiling, the gunshot exploding like thunder, raining plaster onto the table. Mom screamed again. Emily covered her ears, and Dad shoved them both behind him. The tension snapped. The living room erupted in chaos. I moved fast, ducking behind the couch as the guards lunged at the intruders. One guard wrestled with the man holding the crowbar, slamming him against the counter. The other dove at the gunman, knocking his wrist so the pistol clattered across the floor. But the intruder wasn't done. He kicked the guard off, scrambling to his feet, and his eyes locked on me again. "Jessica," he shouted. "You can't run from this forever. You owe us."
Oh.
That single word hit me like a blade to the chest. Emily's head whipped toward me, her face pale, her voice shaking. "Owe them? Jessica, what did you do?" The guards shouted, fists flew, and the sound of struggle filled the room. But my mind was elsewhere. 2 years ago. The deal. The betrayal. And now it had caught up with me. I rose slowly from behind the couch, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "Leave my family out of this. This is between me and you." The gunman's eyes narrowed behind his mask. Finally, some truth. The crowbar man broke free from a guard's grip, grabbed a chair, and hurled it against the wall, shattering it into splinters. "We don't care about your family. We just want what's ours. And if you don't give it," he pointed the jagged piece of wood at Emily. "She pays instead." Emily screamed, clutching Dad's arm tighter. My blood turned to fire. "Don't touch her," I snapped, stepping forward, my voice echoing louder than I expected. "I'll go with you. Just leave them alone." Mom's voice cracked in disbelief. "Jessica, no. Don't you dare." Dad's eyes bore into mine, confused and furious all at once. "What are you hiding from us?" The guards regained control, wrestling the intruders down, pinning their arms. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. My family had heard enough to know that Robert wasn't just spouting nonsense. And worse, so had the neighbors. I could see their silhouettes in the windows, drawn by the shouting, the gunshot, the flashing lights. My life, the one I built so carefully, was unraveling in front of everyone. The police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. But as the intruders were dragged out, their muffled voices carried through the night. "She betrayed us all," one of them shouted. "She sold us out for money." Emily fainted. Right there, in the middle of the chaos, she crumpled to the ground. Emily's body hit the floor with a dull thud. "Emily!" Mom screamed, dropping to her knees. Her hands shook as she patted Emily's face, trying to wake her. "Oh God, she's not moving. She's not moving." Dad scooped her up in his arms, his face grim. "We're not waiting. We're going to the hospital, now." The guards cleared a path, still holding the two masked intruders in restraints as police sirens wailed outside. Flashing red and blue lights lit up the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Neighbors crowded in the street, whispering, pointing, their curious faces pressed against the glass. And all of them saw me, Jessica, the sister who couldn't even afford a car, now surrounded by guards, masked criminals, and chaos. Mom's voice was sharp, trembling. "Don't just stand there, Jessica, help us." I rushed forward, holding Emily's limp hand as Dad carried her out the door. Her skin was cold, her face pale. My chest tightened, my throat closing up. This was my fault. If I hadn't come tonight, if I hadn't brought my world into theirs, none of this would have happened. The guards shoved me toward the waiting SUV. "We'll escort you all," one said firmly. "The hospital is the safest place right now." We sped through the city, sirens trailing us, my family silent and tense beside me. Mom clutched Emily's hand in the back seat, whispering prayers under her breath. Dad's jaw was clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. And me? I stared out the tinted window, my reflection staring back at me, haunted, broken. At the hospital, nurses rushed Emily into the ER. Mom followed, refusing to let go of her daughter's hand. Dad stayed back, pacing the corridor, his eyes darting between me and the double doors where Emily disappeared. Finally, he stopped pacing. His voice was low, dangerous. "Enough." I looked up at him. "What?" He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "No more games, Jessica. No more half-truths. Those men, that Robert guy, they all said the same thing. You owe somebody. You betrayed somebody. You brought danger into our home. And now, Emily," his voice cracked, but he forced it steady. "You tell me right now what you did." Mom emerged from the ER, her face pale but her eyes blazing. "She's stable. They're running tests. But until I know my daughter is safe, I want answers, Jessica.
Now."
The corridor went silent. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the beeping of hospital machines echoing faintly from distant rooms. And all three of them stood there, Dad, Mom, Emily unconscious behind the doors, waiting. My mouth went dry. My body felt heavy. This was it. The moment I had dreaded for 2 years. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. "I didn't betray you. I never would. But yes, I betrayed someone. Someone who trusted me. Someone I cared about. Mom's face twisted in confusion. Who? Dad's fists clenched. What did you do? Before I could answer, footsteps echoed down the corridor. A police officer, tall and stern, approached. Behind him, to my horror, was a man holding a camera. A reporter. The officer looked at me. Jessica Miller? I froze. Yes. He nodded grimly. You need to come with us. And just so you know, this isn't private anymore. The reporter lifted his camera, the red light blinking. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Dad's face went pale. The officer's words cut through me like ice. Your past has just gone public. The red light of the camera reflected in my eyes, burning like fire. Jessica Miller, the reporter said, voice clipped professional. Can you explain your connection to the Miller Logistics deal? Allegations have surfaced that you misappropriated funds. My family froze. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's face went pale, his eyes darting between me and the camera. Emily stirred in the hospital bed, groaning, still weak, but waking up. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch. Yes, I said finally. I did something risky 2 years ago. I took a financial leap that most people would call a betrayal. But I didn't do it for money. I did it to save lives, my company's, my employees, and, ironically, my own. The reporter raised an eyebrow. Go on. I looked at my parents. I saw the confusion, the fear, the judgment in their eyes. And then I looked at Emily, who was slowly understanding that this wasn't the reckless sister they'd mocked. I partnered with someone who trusted me completely. I continued, my voice steady now. And yes, I made choices that seemed selfish at the time.
But those choices built this business.
And this car. And yes, Robert, he misunderstood my actions. He thought I abandoned him, but I never forgot the people I helped. I had to survive first. The camera clicked. The red light blinked. And then, I did something I hadn't expected. I smiled. Because for the first time in years, the words my sister once mocked me with echoed differently in my mind. Can't even afford a car. I looked outside the window where the luxury car waited, shining under the city lights. Come pick me up now, I had said. And they did. But it wasn't just a car. It was proof that I had survived, that I had worked, that I had persevered. Emily, now sitting up, whispered. I didn't know. Mom's voice cracked. Jessica, we didn't understand. We thought you weren't failing. Dad's eyes softened. We were wrong. All of us. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about showing them.
It was about empathy.
It was about the power of kindness and the strength of working through hardship without losing yourself. The officers returned from securing the building. Robert, handcuffed and quiet, glared at me one last time. You'll see, he muttered. Everyone will know the truth eventually. I looked him in the eye and said softly, the only truth that matters is the one I choose to live with. And that truth is that I never stopped caring about people like you. But if you want anger, you'll have to look inside yourself first. The media frenzy continued outside. Flashbulbs popped. Reporters shouted questions.
My family surrounded me.
And I laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It wasn't a boast. It was the laugh of someone who had fought, survived, and proved herself without needing anyone's approval. Emily looked at me, tears in her eyes. You really did all of this? I nodded.
Yes.
And I'm not done yet. But tonight, we celebrate surviving. Together. Mom pulled me into a tight hug.
Dad squeezed my shoulder.
Emily wrapped her arms around me, whispering, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. The car outside gleamed like a promise. Not of wealth, not of power, but of resilience. I smiled again. You know, I said softly, looking at them all, you can laugh now. But just remember, I'm not someone to underestimate. Ever again. Emily fainted, this time, not from shock, but from laughter. Mom groaned, rolling her eyes. Dad shook his head with a small smile. And as I looked out at the city skyline from that hospital window, I knew everything had changed. The burden of being underestimated was gone. The joke was over. And for the first time, I had the last laugh.